I'd like to welcome you to the Conversation Shop with Sedrick Page. We're here with my very special guest, Mr. Jamal McCullen, Miss Dolores McCullen, and our great mayor of Natchez, Mississippi, Mayor Darrell Grinnell. Welcome to the show.
Hello, Cedric.
Yeah, thank you. I'm really excited about this show. One of the main things that made me really interested in doing this with you, and again, it's the Proud to Take a Stand Commission. And I want you to begin, Jamal and Mayor, I'd like you to start by just introducing yourselves to my audience and telling us a little bit about yourselves and telling us how you got involved with the Proud to Take a Stand Commission and why my audience why this should be important to them and why they should donate to this cause, which I ask all of you to donate to this cause. This is something that is very close to my heart and which is why I'm presenting this. Mr. McCullen, tell my audience a little bit about yourself.
All right, my name is Jamal McCullen. Currently, I'm a fifth grade educator here in the city of Natchez. I teach fifth grade language arts and social studies.
Okay.
Born and raised here in Natchez. I became part of this commission. I think I got a text or phone call from the mayor's assistant,
Okay.
who told me the mayor was forming a commission to commemorate the civil rights incident that happened here in Natchez. I'm assuming the mayor knew I had some familiarity with the story.
Mm-hmm.
I worked with some of the people on the commission before, so I gladly accepted the task of working with the commission to do something in the city to recall and show respect for those who came before us,
Yes.
to make a difference in social and civil injustices. So that's how I became part of the commission.
Okay, and the ordeal that we're talking about, tell me a little bit about that. We know it's the Proud to Take a Stand Commission, but what is it that we're proud to take a stand for?
Okay, in 1960s Natchez, just as all around the country, the civil rights movement was taking place. Here in Natchez, local African Americans, young people, older people were involved in that movement.
Okay.
Incidents happened to cause communities to come together to protest inequality, social mistreatment, voting rights and whatnot, the whole gamut of those civil rights issues that everybody faced around the country. But at this particular time in our city,
Mm-hmm.
some of the people who had gathered to protest were unjustly arrested
Wow.
and charged with parading without a permit.
Okay.
They were not given due process. They were taken to jail houses across the county jail, the city jail, and once those were full, they were taken to the city auditorium.
Okay.
Some of those taken to the city auditorium were subsequently transported to the state penitentiary, which has it seem like a gross overreach in terms of law enforcement.
Mm-hmm.
Once there, they were inhumanely treated and subject to more discrimination, more racism, and more unfair treatment.
Okay.
So that's the gist of what happened.
Okay.
There are a lot of details to go along with that, but that's pretty much the crux of the matter.
Okay, and real quickly, Mayor Grinnell, welcome to the show again, sir. And why don't you,
Cedric.
yes, why don't you tell my audience a little bit about you? Your mayorship to me is historic. I'm very happy to have you on the show. And tell us why this initiative is so important to you and the city of Natchez.
Well, I'm Darrell Grinnell again. I am actually a native Natchezian, retired professor of All Points State University. I served on the Adams County Board of Supervisors for 18 years, and I was elected mayor here in the city of Natchez in 2016.
Mm-hmm.
And evidently the people had a lot of confidence in me. In the general election, I won the race by 92.6%
Yes.
of the vote here in the city of Natchez.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up in a house where my parents did not hide the civil rights movement of Natchez from us.
Mm-hmm.
They shared those stories with us. And I can remember my dad telling us about an organization that he was affiliated with known as the Black Dot Club.
Really? Tell us about that a little bit.
They were a group of civil rights workers, and their job was to transport the freedom fighters that came into Natchez. And actually, Congressman John Lewis was one of the individuals that was in Natchez. And there was a threat to assassinate him in Natchez. And my dad was the one that transported him out of Natchez.
Oh, wow.
But Also, a story that my dad would tell us was actually about the Parchman Ordeal, being arrested as a result of participating in a march in 1965, the year that I was born. And it was October 3rd. They had congregated at Beulah Baptist Church for a mass meeting with a mission to march in the city streets of Natchez to the Adams County Courthouse. They were warned by local authorities that if they marched, that they would be arrested. And my dad said that the people who were in attendance, they took the position, we're going to march in the city streets of Natchez anyway, and we're just going to have to fill up your jails. And that did. They commenced the march, and about 2 blocks away from Beulah Baptist Church to where Rose Hill Baptist Church is located, they were confronted by local authorities, and they were arrested. They saturated the city jail, which is in the basement here at City Hall. They saturated the county jail, and the residuals, they took us to the city auditorium, as Jamal had mentioned, and they were sitting there waiting, having no idea of why they were being held at the city auditorium, thinking that it would be a makeshift jail. But to their surprise, there were charter buses that were brought in, and they used local firefighters as guardsmen on those buses, and they bused them to Drew, Mississippi, where Parchman Penitentiary is located. And my dad, I can remember him telling us that on the bus that he was on, one of the leaders, a minister by the name of Reverend Henry Russell, was on that bus, and he was keeping the crowd motivated to say, we're going to be okay. And he had them chanting and singing. And as they arrived into the gates of Parchman Penitentiary, my dad was sitting next to Reverend Russell, and he noticed that Reverend Russell had gone quiet. And he looked over at Reverend Russell, and he saw the biggest tears flowing down his face. And he said, Reb, what's going on? And he looked at my dad and he said, I'm afraid we may not come out of this alive. And my dad said, we're going to be okay. And when they entered into that penitentiary, they were stripped of clothing, they were given laxatives, and they were placed in these cold cells. And it was then I said, why isn't this story being told? You know, as a young man, I kept saying, why isn't this being told? So when I became mayor of the city, I appointed a commission, a diverse commission of citizens here in Natchez, young, old, black, white, and I gave them a charge. And that charge that I gave them is that I wanted them to design a monument to commemorate and memorialize those individuals that were arrested as a result of this horrific ordeal. Second, the charge was to find a location for this monument. And third, to do the due diligence to make sure that everybody who was arrested, whether they went to the city jail, county jail, or state penitentiary, I wanted to make sure that we omitted no names from going on to that monument. That commission took me up on the charge. They designed the monument. They came up with a location, and they did the due diligence to make sure that no one would be omitted from their name being on that monument. But they went beyond the parameters of that charge, and they came up with a name for that monument, and it's called Proud to Take a Stand.
I love that.
To take a stand.
I love that.
The Alderman unanimously supported, endorsed, and approved what the commission had done. So we are on a mission to raise the money for this monument. The cost is $115,000. And as of today, we are about 50% away from achieving that goal.
Well, we're gonna help you, Mayor, get to that goal through my audience. And real quickly, you know, tell my audience why they should get behind this initiative, and again, why should they be supportive of what we're all trying to do here?
Natchez is a city that is 303 years old. We're the oldest city on the Mississippi River. We have a Native American history. We have a French, Spanish, British. We also have great architecture here. Wonderful interval homes. We have the second largest slave site in the United States here in Natchez. We have so much history and beauty in the city. But another part of Natchez history is the civil rights movement. Natchez has one of the greatest civil rights history than any other city, I believe, in the state of Mississippi. I met with former mayor of Atlanta, Andrew Young, in Washington, D.C. a year ago. He was assigned by Dr. Martin Luther King to come to Natchez.
Oh, wow.
Dr. King was supposed to have come to Natchez, but there was an assassination attempt to be made on Dr. King in Natchez. So he sent Andrew Young in his absence.
Okay.
When Andrew Young arrived in the airport in Natchez, Mississippi, he told me out of all the places that he traveled during the civil rights movement, the place that scared him more than any other place was when he came into Natchez. The airport had guardsmen. Every corner, as he was being motored to the mass meeting that evening, on the corners were people with weapons. And when he got to that mass meeting, he said it was such an uproar at that meeting. People wanted to burn down the city. And he said when he got up and spoke, he said he can't remember what he told that audience, but he know the next morning when he woke up, they had not burned down the city. Natchez has a history that is rich. We were the training ground for other communities throughout the state.
Wow.
So it's important for the first civil rights monument in the history of Natchez to be erected so that the story can be told, so that we can memorialize and commemorate those individuals that were proud to take a stand in 1965. But more importantly, it tells history. History is important because it has a tendency to want to repeat itself. And when we know our history, we can block those ugly parts of history from repeating itself. And furthermore, when we tell this story, it helps to bring about unity and healing in this city.
I couldn't agree with you more, Mayor. I hold the thought. We're going to pick up on this on the next segment. We'll be right back on The Conversation Shop.
When the bus stopped, I remember we had guards. I know it was like 2 police officers, and I want to say one was a fireman, you know, in front of the bus, just like you see on TV now. And when the bus stopped, one of them said, he had his back turned, I don't know which one it was, but I remember him saying, "We're here now, get your black asses off."
Hi, welcome back to The Conversation Shop with Sedrick Page. I'm here with my very special guest, Mayor Darrell Grinnell, and my other very, very special guest, Ms. Dolores McCullen. I want to welcome you to the show. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
And Mayor, we're going to dive right back into this segment. I want you to pick up where you left off on the first segment and give us a description about Natchez, about the atmosphere that Ms. Dolores McCullen and her colleagues were living in at the time when they decided to stand up and protest.
Well, in 1965, in October, when this event occurred, what happened prior to then is back in August of that same year, 1965, the president of the local branch of the NAACP, a quiet gentleman, a leader, a man who worked at the local tire plant here in the city of Natchez by the name of George Metcalf.
Mm-hmm.
He was bombed. He survived his bombing, but he was severely injured. So you had an assassination attempt that took place in Natchez of the president of the NAACP.
Mm-hmm.
You also had segregation going on here in the city. You know, it was a period of Jim Crow and a lot of segregation. So the Black community in 1965, they were tired of it. And they said, there's enough of this. We don't want any more bombings. We want equal rights in our city. So a group of black citizens began to have mass meetings. And of course, one of the mass meetings that occurred was at Beulah Baptist Church on October 3rd, 1965, where they had decided prior to that meeting that they were going to march from that church to the Adams County Courthouse to protest against segregation in the city of Natchez.
Okay. And Ms. Dolores McCullen, again, welcome to the show. I want to dive right into this. Your firsthand experience as a participant in this event, in this large protest. So again, I want to welcome you and thank you for coming on the show and sharing your story. I want to dive right in, you have the floor here. I want you to describe and tell me about how you became involved in this and share your experience with my audience.
Okay, to reiterate some of the things that Mayor Grinnell just mentioned, this did happen in October 1965. At that time, I was 15, and we were going to this mass meeting at Beulah Baptist Church. After the meeting was over, the scene was set. We came out of the church, and we were just bombarded by police officers and firemen. We were told we was marching without a permit. Now, keep in mind, we never marched, but that's what we were charged with. So they just, all of a sudden, there were paddy wagons, and they just herdled us up like cattle and put us inside this paddy wagon. And I ended up going to the city auditorium along with my brothers and a few other friends of ours. So we were held in the city auditorium, I'll say maybe an hour or two. And we were just sitting there waiting for our parents. We just knew we were going home. And then all of a sudden, we were asked to get on this Continental bus. And we had gone maybe a couple of hours before we actually knew where we were going. And I think one of the firemen mentioned that we were going to Parchman.
Oh, wow.
Now, being 15, I didn't know anything about Parchman.
Now say that again. You were how old?
I was 15.
15. I want my artists to hear that. This is a 15-year-old young black woman who's being taken to a prison for standing up for her civil rights and standing up for her community. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yes, I was 15, and they herded us, like I said, at the auditorium. Then we headed towards Parchman. I think one of the firemen happened to mention where we were going. Anyway, it was so horrific. It was so scary. This is October 1965, before daylight savings time. So it was really, really, really dark. You couldn't even see your hand before your face. And we had to ride on this bus being intimidated by the police and firemen for about 7 hours.
Now I want to stop you real quick. Take me back a little bit to what motivated you prior to going to the auditorium. What motivated you to be a part of this movement? Like, where did that seed come from? How did you go from schoolgirl, going to school, watching different things in your community, living in a segregated community, but how did you go from that to participating in this protest? And if you don't mind, share with me, my audience, a little bit of your emotion. You know, were you angry? Were you sad? Were you fearful? Did they allow you to talk to your parents? Did they keep you away from your parents? Share with me in detail some of the things you went through, if you don't mind.
Okay, keep in mind that I'm 15. And what motivated me was the bombing of Mr. Metcalf and listening to my parents talk to neighbors and friends about what had happened to him. I was fully aware of what civil rights was all about, because I had experienced some racism, and, you know, like at the movies, we had to sit in the balcony and all of that stuff. So I was fully aware of the racism here in Natchez. So I decided, okay, that wasn't my first protest either. I had gone to several meetings. It's just that this was the big one, as they say, when we got arrested. I was angry. Because at that time I'm realizing that we're not being treated as, you know, other races. You know, we stood out as being black, so we didn't deserve to be treated like anything. And that really made me angry. But from there, I decided, okay, this is civil rights. We're going to take a stand. So, okay, it's time for me to get my hands dirty, so to speak. So I ended up going to the meeting that night, and I got arrested.
No fear? No fear, just strong black woman. I like that.
a strong black woman until we left the auditorium.
Okay.
And then that's when the fear set in because, like I said earlier, we didn't know where we were going. You know, you're on this bus, it's dark, and you got policemen with guns and firemen sitting, you know, and they're all staring at you, you know, and talking to us crazy like we're a herd of cattle, you know, all the name calling and this, that, and the other.
Yes,
Which
ma'am.
was okay because we were used to that. It wasn't okay for them to say it, but, you know, we had heard all this before. So we kind of immune to being handled like that.
Okay.
But anyway, we go on to Parchman. And there was one lady on the bus with me. Her name was Barbara Ray Carey. She motivated us because she was known in Natchez as a very, very good singer. And she sung a lot.
Okay.
And we, you know, she sung a lot and we sung. And, you know, it made the trip a little bit easier, but it was still scary. Okay. Now, I had my brother in my sight, but we got separated on the bus.
Okay.
So that made it actually really hard for me. But when we arrived, that's when the fear really set in. Because once we went through the gate, one of the firemen got up and he said, "We're here. So y'all get y'all black asses off the bus."
Wow.
So we get off the bus, and then they have us to line up in front of a fence, which later we found out was an electrical fence. Our backs are to the fence. In front of us are German Shepherd dogs, just barking, slobbing at the mouth, and, you know, like any movement you make, you're afraid they're going to attack you. They probably were attack dogs, but I have no way of knowing that. But
wow.
This is what we were subjects to. So after that, they took us in a little, I don't know, I guess it was an office on the side of Parchman. But anyway, we had to go in there one by one. And this time, they were giving us an 8-ounce glass of milk of magnesia and X-Lac, which actually looked like a chocolate malt.
Okay.
But it was intended,
To dehydrate you, to harm you.
Dehydrate. Okay, so we had to go through this, and that time we were stripped. I mean, they just tried to humiliate us as much as possible. We were stripped. They were taking shoes and socks and coats. It was so bad they were even taking the ladies' wigs.
Oh,
Why
wow.
wigs? I have no idea. To this day, I don't understand why they took the wigs. The shoes, the coats, socks, and jacket. I can understand that. So they herded us off into different cells. My particular cell, there were 7 of us in the cell. Now, mind you, they had already given us the concoction of milk of magnesia and X-Lac. So you got 7 ladies in a cell. You got 1 commode. You have 1 roll of tissue. 1 bed, which they had taken the mattress off, so it's just cold iron. And like I said earlier, this is October, so it's really, really, really cold. And that particular area is really cold as Natchez. But we were in there. Everybody hasn't used the bathroom, so you can imagine what was going on in there.
Yes.
Yeah. But we suffered through that. But the men were treated a little bit worse than us. The men were actually stripped of their clothing. They were left in their underwear. And they were lined up, and they actually turned a hose out on them. So they watered them down. That was to humiliate them and actually makes them colder. They did us too. They opened up all the windows in the unit. You know, I guess the intent was for us to freeze to death.
Yeah,
But
kill you.
we huddled together, we sang, we prayed, we did whatever we had to do, you know, to tolerate this until we can get out. And you mentioned Reverend Russell earlier. Now, Reverend Russell was a big motivator of ours because even though they were on the other side of the prison, we couldn't see the men, but we could hear them. And Reverend Russell prayed all day and all night. And I could hear some of the officials telling him he needed to stop. He did not stop. And after a while, we could hear them hitting him. We could hear, you know, them beating him.
Oh, wow.
And he still ended up getting out a prayer. Each time they hit him, he would pray louder and louder. We cried. We prayed. We begged. Leave him alone. They're going to kill him. We were just really afraid for Reverend Russell.
Yes.
So going on this day, I ended up being up there for 3 days. And it was horrific.
Now, how did you go from being there? How did you get back home?
My father.
Okay.
My father, your grandfather,
Yes.
and Mr. Rollins. I don't know if you remember him, but they all came up. My father was had his own business, so to speak. And your grandfather, Mr. Vernon Johnson, he had his own business. So, of course, they were able to post bonds. So they bonded us out. So they arrived at Parchman and they picked us up.
Wow.
They picked me up, my brother, your father, and Mr. Rollins' son. So the four of us, they got us on the third day. Now, mind you, a lot of people was left up there for the full 7 days, 7, maybe more.
Wow.
Because they couldn't get a bond. And they fed us cold grits in the morning. You couldn't eat. You couldn't eat. So when it was time for us to go, they would walk down the cell block, you know, and say, when I call your name, you need to yell out your cell number immediately. And if you didn't do it immediately, then they said they was going to close the door and you'd be here longer. So when I heard my name, of course, I yelled out. I was in this cell number 7.
Okay.
And when I walked down the hall and went through the door, all I seen was my dad with a big old smile on his face. So
Right.
I ran to him. I was the first one out. Then my brother came. Then Vernon came. And then Francis came. And we all got together, you know, hugged and cried. And we ended up coming back home, which was also scary because we're in this car with these 3 black men and we're only kids, you know, and we have to go out of the gate down this dark highway again. That was really terrifying because we didn't know, you know, what to expect.
If someone's going to
So-
shoot or harm you, yeah.
Right. But my father had been one of the ones that helped, I guess you would call, protect the people at the church because he and a couple of his buddies, you know, they would lay on top of the roof of the church with shotguns and rifles, and they were kind of scouting out to see if any white people were, you know, around the church or presented any harm. So they were like the lookout crew.
They were your protectors.
They were our protectors. Right. They were our protectors. So on the way home, we just, you know, we scared and they're driving and all of a sudden my dad pulls off the road and asks us to get out the car. And when we get out the car, they remove the back seats and up come the weapons. And my dad said, do you really think we was going to come down this highway with nothing? So
I got you.
and I was saying, well, you know, they got through the search. Of course, they searched the cars, but they didn't pull the seat out. So then now they're armed, and we still have to go down this highway, which was really frightening. But I lived to tell the tale.
What an amazing tale that is. Hey, we're going to
Yes.
finish up with your description of what happened when we come back on the third segment. We'll be right back on the Conversation Shop. Hi, welcome back to the Conversation Shop with Sedrick Page. I'm here again with my very special guest, Mayor Darrell Grinnell, and we have some new participants here. We have Miss Sarah Carter-Smith, welcome to the show, and we have Mr. Robert Purnell. Welcome to the show, guys. I'm really happy to have you here.
We're happy to be here.
Thank you. And Mayor, we're gonna go right back into you sharing with my audience. You know, tell my audience the history of Natchez. Natchez has a great legacy of protest and support of the civil rights movement, quite frankly, that I didn't know about and that I'm extremely proud to learn about. And I'd ask you to share that legacy with my audience.
Yeah, Natchez has an extremely rich civil rights history. You know, I had mentioned to you that Andrew Young, former mayor of Atlanta, came to Natchez. He was sent here by Dr. King, and his experience when he arrived in the city. But Natchez was actually the training ground for other towns and cities throughout the state of Mississippi. There were a group of men here in Natchez that went to Bogalusa, Louisiana, where the original Deacons of Defense were. And they were trained by the Deacons of Defense in Bogalusa, and they brought that practice back to Natchez. So the first Deacons of Defense in the state of Mississippi were in Natchez.
Wow.
And those deacons in Natchez went to other cities and towns in the state of Mississippi and trained other Deacons of Defense across the state of Mississippi. But not only that, as I mentioned earlier, you had a group called the Black Dot Club. Their job was actually to transport civil rights workers that came from other places, especially like the freedom fighters that came into Mississippi. Their job was to move them around. And the way that these Black Dot members recognize each other is that there is a black dot tattooed on their left pectoralis, on their chest.
Okay.
My dad, who is still alive, his black dot is still there. And we have very few Black Dot members that are still alive today. I only know of about 3 or 4 of them.
Okay.
So you had the Black Dot group. You also had a group which was a subsidiary of the NAACP known as the Icebreakers.
Really?
These members of the NAACP, their job was to go into segregated establishments like your department store lunch counters. They went in, they knew that they couldn't be served as Black Americans, but they went in and demanded service. And they were protected on the outside by the Deacons of Defense. So you had all of these different groups of individuals that did the work here in Natchez, but they also went to other places throughout the state of Mississippi to get them to be trained in the civil rights practices. And another important practice that started here in Natchez and was demonstrated to other cities was economic boycotts. Some of your first economic boycotts took place here in the city of Natchez, and they trained other cities on the power of economic boycott.
I got to have you repeat that, Mayor. I think that's really important. Say that again to my audience.
The first economic boycotts in the state of Mississippi took place here in the city of Natchez.
Wow.
And we went to other places. They took those strategies to other cities and towns throughout the state to show them and demonstrate to them the practice of economic boycotts and the power of economic boycotts, which of course was used for many times throughout the state of Mississippi. So Natchez was actually that training ground. So when we talk about like the Little Rock Nine and the Tougaloo Nine, Natchez has a wealth of civil rights history. And that's why it's so important for me to have erected the first civil rights monument in the history of Natchez, which is this one, Proud to Take a Stand.
Yes.
It is important. We've got Miss Willie Mae Robinson, who's 93 years old this year. I saw her about a month ago at a program, and she grabbed me and she said, "Daryl, I want to see that monument before I leave this earth." So I'm on a mission. Let's get this monument erected.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for sharing that story. Mr. Purnell and Miss Sarah Carter-Smith, again, welcome to the show. Please share with my audience, beginning with Miss Carter-Smith, tell my audience why this is so important to you. How did you get involved with this initiative? And again, why this is important to you.
Well, I got involved with the initiative when my mayor came to me and told me about the committee, and I learned about the possibility of this monument happening. Mm-hmm. And he asked me would I want to be involved in it, and I said yes without hesitation. I absolutely wanted to be involved with it. I was born in 1966, mm-hmm. So I didn't experience all this and didn't know, I didn't have all the knowledge that our mayor has shared with you today. And during our, as you know, Natchez is 303 years old. During our tricentennial, one of the biggest things we wanted to do was do something that involved everybody in this town, not just one segment of this town. We wanted to create unity. We wanted to bring people together and work together on committees and put on our tricentennial. And during that tricentennial was when the Parchman Ordeal film was first debuted at the City Auditorium. And I honestly knew of the event and the horrors of it, but when I saw that movie, I learned so much. I mean, I'll cry thinking about it now. It was hard to hear what we've heard today. But anyway, I was moved and really and truly just thought we have to do this. I mean, I knew why the mayor wanted to do it, and I knew that Mr. Purnell, Robert, my friend, was heading this commission, and I respect him. I knew that he would lead us, in a positive way. And I've been on a lot of committees in Natchez, and especially since I've been involved in politics, and I've never seen anything with so much passion. I experienced the passion that each person on that committee had to see this through. And I didn't get to go to every meeting, and I can't take credit for a lot of things with it, but I can tell you it's a great group of people, and I want to see this happen just as much as all the people that you've spoken with today. And I really, the Board of Aldermen, as the mayor mentioned, supported it. The cities supported it. The governor supported it. I mean, we've got a lot of momentum here, and I don't want to see anything slow it down. And it's hard for me because I was born in that time and I didn't experience this growing up. I went to public school and had wonderful relationships, and went to school with both the white and African American race. And so I just didn't have an understanding. And we all know that knowledge creates understanding. Yes. And as you learn what other people experience, what they've gone through, then you can understand where you're coming from. And getting to know people truly is what makes you it makes any place become a better place. And it makes you family. And I love this town, and I see so many great people here, and I know that we all want it to move forward. And this is a way to move forward. This is a way to let people know that we acknowledge that all of our history isn't good, but it is the history here. And the mayor mentioned, history to repeat itself. And I want people to come here, and people that grew up here like me that didn't understand everything, to see that monument and be moved and create a desire in them to learn more about the civil rights history, which I learn something new every day. I've learned something new today. And I want to keep studying and keep learning and keep growing as a person. And that's how we grow as a human race, and not one human race. And we're all part of that human race. So I'm not going to hog all this.
We're going to make this happen. We're definitely going to make this happen. And Mr. Robert Purnell, thank you again, sir. Share with me why this is important to you and why are you spearheading this initiative, sir?
Well, thank you, Cedric. It's a 13-member commission, and I became the chair by default, probably. But for me, I grew up in California.
Okay.
And when I was in college, I had Black history, Black studies. I never heard of Parchman. When I came here, my grandparents and parents are from this area. When I moved back and got on this commission and began to research the Parchman Ordeal, I was moved. Mm-hmm. And we wanted to memorialize those folks in a way that not just a sign, but something that was magnificent that no one would forget when they come to Natchez. Yes. So part of our deliberations was we wanted it to have historical significance to the event in terms of where we placed it. We also wanted it to be large enough so you could see it when you drive by. Mm-hmm. So the monument will be 6 feet tall, 12 feet long, in an oval shape, 8 inches thick, and weigh 1,020 pounds.
Okay.
So, and it would be a Black granite facing. Mm-hmm. Also, what's important is the story. Now, we've heard on your show about the stories, and the story, the narrative will be on the back of the monument.
Okay.
So we will have all of the names of the people that we could identify on the back, the narrative, which is the story, which is important, on the back, as well as the city passed a resolution apologizing for the event. That will also be on the back of the stone.
We'll be right back on The Conversation Shop. Hi, welcome back to The Conversation Shop. I'm here with my very special guest, Mr. Robert Purnell, Mayor Darrell Grinnell, and Mr. Jamal McCullen. Gentlemen, welcome back to The Conversation Shop.
Thank you, sir.
And Mr. Purnell, we're going to dive right back into our conversation on the last segment. Please share with my audience the members of your committee, we want to make sure we celebrate everyone that's participating in this initiative.
We have 13 members on the commission.
Mm-hmm.
And Sedrick, I'm going to read them because I don't want to leave anyone out.
Yes.
Teresa Busby, Peggy Pierreport, Jamar McCullen,
Mm-hmm.
Dolores McCullen, Patricia Carroll, Sarah Carter Smith, Robert Morgan, Ronald Goldman, Sarah Perry Brown, Darrell White, Eric Rice,
Mm-hmm.
Liz Dantone, and myself, Robert Purnell.
Thank you for sharing that. And again, we want to celebrate everyone that's participating in this initiative. And I want to thank you personally for your efforts in pushing this initiative forward. Mr. McCullen, real quickly, if you don't mind, I want to move right into sharing with my audience where they can go to make a donation to this initiative. And again, share with them why this is important.
Okay, to your viewing audience who want to help us have this come to fruition, they can make a donation, a tax-deductible donation, to Proud to Take a Stand Monument, P.O. Box 18127. That's P.O. Box 18127, Natchez, Mississippi. Natchez, N-A-T-C-H-E-Z, Mississippi 39122.
I'm going to have you repeat that again, Mr. McCullen. Say that again, just a little louder for me.
Okay. Your viewing audience who want to help us see this thing become a reality may make a donation, a tax-deductible donation, to Proud to Take a Stand Monument, Post Office Box 18127, Natchez, Mississippi 39122.
And is there a GoFund web address for this as well, in case they want to go online?
We also have a GoFundMe page, and it's at gofundme.com/Proud to Take a Stand Monument.
Okay, and my audience, we're going to be showing you where to go. We're going to be posting this web address up for you on the show, and I challenge all of you to get behind this initiative and donate as much as you can. This is very important to me, and I feel privileged to be a part of this. Mayor, real quickly, I want you to wrap this up for me. I want you to share with my audience again why it's so important for them to donate and help the Natchez community, to help the committee, and to help you push this initiative forward. And last but not least, I want you to share with the citizens of Natchez and my audience why this is so meaningful to the community and why the community should be behind this as well.
Well, this monument will tell a very important chapter of Natchez history. It will commemorate, it will memorialize those people who were proud to take a stand in 1965. It will tell the history so that people will know Natchez history. But not only that, it will also help to create that civil rights trail that we need here in Natchez. You know, so that when people travel to Natchez, they can know that civil rights history. This will be the first civil rights monument in the history of this city. So it is very important that we get this monument erected so that that history can be told. It is so important. Before I appointed this commission, one of the things that I did, Sedrick, is that I went out to the Natchez Police Department and met with the police chief to see if he had all of the arrest records of those people who were arrested October 3rd, 1965.
Yes.
And to my surprise, all of the arrest records were there in a file. And that's what I presented to this commission when I first appointed them, were those arrest records, and say, hey, this is the start of your list, of putting a list together of everybody that were a part of this ordeal.
But thank you for sharing that with me. And I want to also share with my audience, as a member of the Natchez community, growing up in that community, having family members on this committee, and having a father and cousin that were active in this protest. This means the world to me. I've learned some things on this show today that I knew nothing about, and it makes me proud to be a member of this community. And I say it again, proud to be a member of this community, proud to know that I'm part of a long civil rights legacy. And I come from a legacy of strong people, strong in protest, strong in who they are, strong in representing themselves. And to see this push forward again means the world to me. So I challenge all of my community here in Madison. I challenge my community on Spotify. I challenge my community on YouTube. I challenge my community on Apple to all support this initiative. I get a little emotional when I talk about things that hit close to home. And this is something that's pulling my heartstrings. So Mayor Jamal, Mr. Purnell, Ms. Dolores McCullough, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart by giving me the honor and the privilege to participate in this. I'm going to defer to you guys, to each one of you, to leave my audience with some closing statements. Jamal?
I'll go first. For me, Sedrick, being part of this committee and doing what we're doing to recall and respect what those who came before us did, so that people like you and myself could have a better place in this society, was inspirational for me. That was my main motivation. I wish I could say the moment I heard these stories that I immediately became some type of social injustice or civil rights activist, but that wasn't the case, because I heard the story as a preteen or early teen, and I think it kind of germinated until I got to be a young man, and the seed was planted, and I'm proud to take up, at least in some fashion, some of what my mother and my uncle and your father did in the city of Natchez, just trying to ensure that people were treated as people, treated fairly, equitably, and that's all I wanted to make sure people are treated fairly, respected, their history is respected as well, and come together as a unified community. So that's been my main motivation as part of this commission.
And Mr. Purnell?
Well, first of all, thank you, Sedrick. For me, it's symbolic of all those who took a stand back during the civil rights. But what's more important than that it's the monument itself. It will be around for 100 years. That stone is not going anywhere. The wind's not going to blow it down. It will be anchored, and it will have a plaza around it where you can go and sit and read the story. So the story will stay in Natchez for eternity, I'd like to think, but certainly for 90 years, 100 years.
Yes, sir. And Mayor, we're going to end with you, sir. Final words with you.
Again, thank you for having us on your program. And I tell you, this is it's a passion of mine to see this monument come to fruition. As I told you earlier, I mean, I grew up knowing what occurred in the civil rights movement. I was born in 1965 in the peak of the civil rights era here in the city of Natchez. As Robert mentioned, this monument is symbolic of all of the civil rights that has occurred. You know, the bombing of Wallace Jackson, the bombing of George Metcalf, the assassination of Ben Chester White, and all of the other tumultuous events that took place in the city. It's important for people to know history. And as I told you, history has a tendency to want to repeat itself. And when we know our history, we can put those necessary barricades up in order to block and deter those bad parts of history. The good parts of history we want to repeat themselves, but bad history we don't. And it also helps to create unity. And it sends a message that, hey, it's okay to talk about the civil rights movement here in Natchez. You know, my best friends, I've got some of my best friends are Black, and some of my best friends are white. And I can sit down with all people and talk about this, and it's so important. So, you know, I get teary-eyed when I revisit, and every time I drive down Canal and look at the city auditorium, the site where this monument will be erected, there are chills that run down my spine because I am so excited about getting this monument there and seeing it in place. So again, I thank you for having us, and to all out there who can help us raise the money, please do so. Thank you, and God bless you all.
Well, again, to my audience, we're going to support this initiative. We're going to help them reach their goal. And quite frankly, we're going to help them exceed their goal. When we forget our past, we're doomed to repeat it in the future. So I challenge all of you to unify and get behind this for me and for the city of Natchez. I thank you and see you next time on The Conversation Shop.